Welcome back to the deep dive. Today
Yeah.
we're looking at something pretty intense.
Okay.
We're going to be diving into ancient atonement rituals,
All right.
straight out of Leviticus Chapter 4,
Okay.
using the King James Version.
Right?
And we're also going to be looking at a commentary on this chapter from 1710 by Matthew Henry
Cool.
to get another perspective on this.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, ancient rituals, how exciting can that be?
Right.
But trust me, this deep dive gets really fascinating.
Okay.
We're going to uncover how the ancient Israelites sought forgiveness for unintentional sins.
Interesting.
Think of it like accidentally breaking a rule you didn't even know existed.
Okay.
They had specific animals, intricate rituals, and even a whole hierarchy of who brings what offering.
Wow.
Really makes you think about their beliefs in societal structure.
Yeah, it is intriguing that the offerings we're exploring today are specifically for unintentional sins.
Right.
What are called sins of ignorance in
Mhm.
Leviticus. This isn't about deliberate rebellion,
Okay.
but those moments where you slip up, you make a mistake without even realizing you're breaking a rule.
So if we're talking about unintentional mistakes,
Yeah.
what did they believe needed to happen to make things right?
Well, the ancient Israelites believed that even these unintentional transgressions needed to be addressed. They believed in maintaining a kind of spiritual harmony,
Okay.
and these offerings were a way to restore that balance.
It's almost like a cosmic reset button.
Right.
Okay, so they had these offerings, but you mentioned a hierarchy.
Right.
Who brought what, and what can we learn from that?
Leviticus Chapter 4 lays it all out,
Okay.
outlining different offerings based on your standing in society.
Mhm.
We're talking about a distinct hierarchy with the anointed priest,
Go.
the whole congregation,
Okay.
a ruler,
Right.
and then a common person,
Okay.
each having a specific offering.
So even the high priest,
Yes.
the anointed one, could mess up.
Yes.
That's kind of humbling, isn't it?
It really emphasizes the idea that no one is perfect.
Right.
Even someone in such a revered position, someone believed to be chosen by God,
Right.
could still sin unintentionally.
Wow.
It underscores the universal human experience of fallibility.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Okay.
Starting at the top.
Okay.
What did the high priest offer for his unintentional sins?
He would offer a young bullock without blemish.
Bullock.
Yes.
Okay.
A bullock was a valuable animal.
Right.
And the fact that it had to be without blemish suggests a higher level of purity was required for this offering.
So like the best of the best.
Yes, exactly.
And what about the whole congregation?
Okay.
What happened when the entire community unknowingly transgressed?
In those cases, the elders would lay hands on the bullock.
Wow.
Can you imagine the weight of that?
Yeah.
The entire community's sin symbolically transferred to this animal?
That must have been a powerful moment.
Yes.
It seems like they really felt a collective responsibility for their actions.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that sense of shared accountability is really woven into the fabric of this whole system.
All right, moving down the line.
Okay.
What about a ruler?
Yeah.
What did their offering look like?
A ruler would offer a male goat, again, without blemish.
Okay.
You see, leaders were held to a higher standard because their actions had a greater impact on the community.
Makes sense.
It wasn't just about personal transgressions. It was about the potential consequences for everyone they led.
Their decisions could affect a lot of people, so the offering had to reflect that.
Exactly.
So what about the everyday person?
Okay.
What did the common folk offer?
They would bring a female goat or a lamb, also without blemish.
Okay.
The important thing to remember here is that everyone had a path to atonement.
Right.
It wasn't just reserved for the elite or those in power.
So regardless of your social standing,
Yeah.
there was a way to make things right.
Yes.
Now, I'm struck by how specific these offerings are.
Yeah.
The animal,
Yes.
the gender,
Yeah.
the lack of blemishes. It seems like every detail matters.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it speaks volumes about their worldview.
Right.
The type of animal, its gender, its physical perfection.
Right.
All of these factors played a role in the efficacy of the offering.
Wow.
It's a fascinating window into their social structure and the value they placed on order and ritual.
All right, so we've got the who's who of sin offerings.
Right.
But what about the ritual itself?
Okay.
What did it actually look like to go through this process?
Well, get ready for some vivid imagery.
Okay.
The ritual was a multisensory experience. It began with the laying on of hands,
Okay.
a physical act of transferring the sin onto the animal.
Right.
Then came the killing of the animal,
Whoa.
followed by the sprinkling of its blood.
That's pretty intense.
Yes.
It must have been quite a sight to see.
Yes, and each step was loaded with symbolic meaning.
I can imagine.
It wasn't just about the physical act, but the spiritual significance behind it.
But let's dive a little deeper into the meaning behind all this.
Yeah.
What was the symbolic significance of the blood, the killing, the burning?
It was about purification.
Okay.
The sprinkling of blood was particularly significant. Imagine that vivid red against the white robes of the priests.
Yeah.
It represented cleansing the sacred space from the taint of sin.
Wow.
And the burning of the offering.
Yes.
That was about sending the sin up to God, seeking his forgiveness.
It's interesting how these physical actions were so deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs.
Right.
It wasn't just going through the motions, but a way of physically enacting their desire for atonement.
And you know, there's one more element we need to talk about,
Yeah.
which is the burning of the offering outside the camp.
Okay.
Do you know why that was significant?
I'm curious to hear more about that.
Okay.
What was the meaning behind that particular detail?
It symbolized removing the sin from the community.
Okay.
It was like physically pushing the transgression away,
Right.
creating a tangible separation between the people and their wrongdoing.
So they're literally taking the sin, placing it on this animal, and then removing it from their midst.
Exactly.
It's a very powerful visual representation of spiritual cleansing.
Yes.
Almost like they were trying to protect the community from the contamination of sin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the idea of purifying the sacred space, protecting the community from the contaminating effects of sin.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
That need to create a physical distance between themselves and their transgressions.
It makes you think about how they viewed the power of sin and the lengths they went to cleanse themselves from it.
Yes.
But now let's bring in another perspective.
Okay.
We have Matthew Henry's commentary from 1710.
Right.
His interpretation adds a really interesting layer to our understanding of these rituals.
Yes, Matthew Henry is a significant figure in biblical commentary, and his work is still widely read and studied today.
Right.
What makes his interpretation of Leviticus Chapter 4 so interesting is his focus on repentance. He saw these offerings not simply as a way to appease God, but as a demonstration of genuine remorse and a desire to turn away from sin.
So it wasn't just about going through the motions, but about an internal change of heart.
Precisely. For Henry, true atonement involved both the outward act of sacrifice and the inward act of repentance.
Okay.
You had to show you were truly sorry and committed to changing your ways.
That has a whole new dimension to these rituals.
Right.
It's not just about appeasing a higher power, but about genuine self-reflection and a commitment to personal growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about taking responsibility for your actions and striving to be better.
And he also draws a connection to Christ as the ultimate sacrifice, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Henry saw the sin offerings in Leviticus as foreshadowing Christ's sacrifice on the cross. Just as the animal's blood was shed to atone for the sins of the people,
Right.
Christ's sacrifice represents the ultimate act of atonement for all sins.
So even though these rituals might seem very distant from our modern world,
Yes.
Henry saw a timeless message at their core,
Yes.
a message about the need for repentance, forgiveness, and ultimately redemption.
Absolutely.
And there's another point Henry raises that I think is relevant for us today.
Okay.
He believed that even unintentional sins require atonement.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we are all accountable for our actions,
Right.
even those we commit unknowingly.
Exactly.
So it's not just about the big deliberate sins, but also the smaller everyday slip-ups.
Right.
We need to be mindful of those as well.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about cultivating a sense of responsibility for our choices and seeking forgiveness when we fall short,
Right.
even if we didn't mean to.
It sounds like these ancient rituals touch on some pretty fundamental human experiences
Yes.
that need to make things right, to seek reconciliation, to find peace after wrongdoing.
And that's what's so powerful about studying ancient texts like Leviticus.
Right?
They offer a window into how people have grappled with these universal human questions throughout history.
Yeah. It's like we're joining a conversation that's been going on for centuries.
Exactly.
And while we may not sacrifice animals anymore, the core themes still resonate.
Yes.
The desire for forgiveness, the need for atonement, and the search for spiritual cleansing.
And I think that's why these ancient rituals, despite their seemingly archaic nature,
Right.
still have something to teach us about ourselves and our own spiritual journeys. They offer a glimpse into the human desire to make amends,
Right.
to seek forgiveness, and to restore a sense of balance and harmony in our lives.
So we've really gone deep into Leviticus chapter 4, haven't we?
We have.
We've explored the intricacies of sin offerings in ancient Israel,
Right.
uncovering the hierarchy of offerings and the meticulous details involved in each sacrifice.
Yes.
We've also considered Matthew Henry's interpretation,
Yeah.
which emphasizes repentance and foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice of Christ.
Exactly.
Right? And we've also seen how these ancient practices connect to universal human themes that still resonate today.
Yeah.
The need to acknowledge and atone for wrongdoing, the desire for reconciliation and spiritual cleansing.
Absolutely.
These are experiences that transcend time and culture.
Right.
Absolutely. And that leads us to a thought-provoking question for you to consider.
Okay.
How do these ancient practices compare to modern-day ways of seeking forgiveness and making amends? Do we still see echoes of these rituals in our own lives,
Right.
in our relationships, or in our spiritual practices?
That's a great question.
Now, it's a question worth pondering as we continue our deep dive into Leviticus and the complexities of atonement in the next part of our exploration.
I agree. It's fascinating to think about how these ancient rituals might play out in a modern context.
Yeah.
We may not have the same physical rituals, but the underlying need to acknowledge wrongdoing and seek forgiveness remains incredibly relevant.
I agree. Thinking about all this talk of sin and atonement feels a bit heavy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if these rituals were driven by fear or a genuine desire to make things right.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a simple answer.
Right.
It was likely a complex mix of both.
Okay.
On the one hand, there's a strong sense of awe and fear towards God,
Right.
and a desire to avoid his wrath.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, I think there was also a genuine desire for reconciliation,
Okay.
a yearning to restore right relationship with both God and the community.
So it was about more than just avoiding punishment. It
Yeah.
was about restoring balance.
Yes.
Both within themselves and within the community.
Exactly.
It sounds like a deeply personal and communal experience all at once.
Exactly. And, it's interesting to consider how this idea of atonement,
Right.
of making things right,
Yeah.
plays out in our lives today. We don't have burnt offerings or animal sacrifices,
Why?
but we still grapple with questions of guilt forgiveness and how to repair relationships when we've hurt others.
That's true. We might not have prescribed rituals,
Right.
but we still have our own ways of seeking forgiveness, right?
Absolutely.
Think about apologies, acts of restitution, even therapy.
Right.
These are all, in a way, modern forms of atonement.
Absolutely. They're different expressions of the same underlying human need to acknowledge wrongdoing,
Right.
make amends, and restore harmony.
It's almost like these ancient rituals provide a framework for understanding a universal human experience.
And it's not just about individual actions either.
Okay.
Think about how we grapple with collective responsibility and societal wrongs in the modern world.
Right.
Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, reparations for historical injustices. These are all ways of confronting past wrongs and attempting to create a more just future.
It's fascinating how those large-scale efforts mirror, in a way,
Yeah,
the collective responsibility symbolized by the elders laying hands on the bullock.
absolutely.
It's about acknowledging the weight of the past and taking collective action to move forward.
Right. It's about recognizing that we are all part of a larger web of relationships,
Yeah.
and that our actions, both individually and collectively, have consequences.
I've been thinking about this idea of unintentional sins as we've been talking.
Right.
It's easy to dismiss those smaller transgressions,
Yeah.
but Matthew Henry seems to suggest that even those require attention.
Yes, and I think that's a valuable insight for us today.
Okay.
In a world where we are bombarded with information and constantly making choices,
Right.
it's easy to become desensitized to the impact of our actions, even those we don't intend to cause harm.
So how do we apply this idea of atonement to our modern lives?
Right.
If we're not sacrificing animals, what are our modern-day rituals of seeking forgiveness and making amends?
I think it starts with cultivating a greater sense of awareness and mindfulness, paying attention to the ripple effects of our choices, even the seemingly small ones.
Right.
It's about being willing to acknowledge when we've messed up, even if unintentionally, and taking responsibility for our actions.
It's about having the humility to say, I made a mistake and I'm sorry,
Yes.
and then taking concrete steps to repair the harm we've caused,
Right.
whether it's a sincere apology, an act of service, or a commitment to changing our behavior.
Yeah.
Those actions speak volumes.
And sometimes it might involve seeking professional help
Hmm.
like therapy,
Okay.
to help us work through those deeper issues and develop healthier patterns of behavior.
So atonement isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing process of self-reflection,
Right.
growth, and repair.
Exactly.
It's about striving to live in greater harmony with ourselves and with the world around us.
Exactly. And it's a process that requires courage, humility, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes.
Hmm.
It's not always easy, but it's essential for living a meaningful and ethical life.
As we've been delving into these ancient rituals,
Yeah,
I've been struck by how much wisdom and insight they offer for navigating the complexities of human relationships,
absolutely.
even today.
I agree. There's something timeless about these fundamental human experiences. The
Hmm.
need to acknowledge wrongdoing, to seek forgiveness, and to make things right. And these ancient texts offer a profound reflection on these universal struggles.
And perhaps by studying these ancient practices,
Right.
we can gain a deeper understanding of our own modern-day struggles
Yeah.
and find more meaningful ways to seek forgiveness, make amends, and build stronger, more compassionate relationships.
So as we conclude this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we invite you to consider this question.
Yep.
What are your own personal rituals of atonement?
Hmm.
How do you seek forgiveness and make amends in your own life?
That's a great question.
It's a question worth pondering as we continue our exploration of Leviticus and the timeless themes of sin atonement and the human search for redemption.
It's amazing how these ancient rituals, as archaic as they may seem, still resonate with us today.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the enduring power of these themes of sin atonement and reconciliation.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And, one thing that strikes me is how these rituals were so deeply integrated into their daily lives. It wasn't just a once-a-year thing.
Right.
It was woven into the fabric of their society,
Right.
their legal system, their understanding of their relationship with God.
That's a great point. It wasn't just about individual acts of atonement, but about creating a society that was constantly striving for purity and balance.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how our modern approach to these issues might be quite different.
Yes, we tend to compartmentalize things more.
Right.
Religion, law, personal ethics,
Right.
they often operate in separate spheres.
Yeah.
But for the ancient Israelites, it was all interconnected.
And that interconnectedness, that sense of shared responsibility, seems like something we might be missing in our modern world.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perhaps there's something to learn from their approach. Maybe by reconnecting those different aspects of our lives, we can create a more holistic approach to ethics, forgiveness, and making amends.
It's like we've been focusing on the individual pieces without seeing the whole puzzle. Maybe by understanding the interconnectedness of it all, we can develop a deeper, more nuanced understanding of what it means to live a good and meaningful life.
Perhaps. And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder how future generations will view our own approaches to sin, forgiveness, and atonement.
That's interesting.
Will they see our practices as just as intricate and symbolic as we view those of the ancient Israelites?
It's a fascinating question to consider. We often view the past as primitive or outdated,
Yeah.
but perhaps future generations will look back at our time and wonder about our rituals and beliefs, just as we do with the ancient Israelites.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we're all part of this ongoing human story, grappling with these timeless questions of right and wrong, forgiveness and redemption.
Right.
And each generation finds its own ways of expressing these universal themes.
So as we conclude this exploration of ancient atonement rituals, we leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
What will your contribution be to this ongoing story? How will you navigate the complexities of sin, forgiveness, and atonement in your own life?
It's a question worth pondering as we continue our own journeys of self-discovery, growth, and reconciliation.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Leviticus and the fascinating world of ancient atonement rituals.
It was fun.
We'll be back next time for another exploration of history, culture, and the human experience.